The author says, may Allah have mercy upon him, Al-Babul Awwal, the first chapter, I'tiqadu Ahli-Sunnah Wal-Jamaʿah, the creed of Ahlus-Sunnah Wal-Jamaʿah. Ha huna jumlatun min al-aqaid. This is a presentation of Islamic convictions. ثبتت بدلائل نقلية وعقلية, affirmed by documentary evidence and sound intellectual arguments. This is the reverse of what the author mentioned. He mentioned the mental arguments, and then he mentioned the documentary evidence. So since documentary evidence has priority over rational arguments, then I switched them. ثبتت بدلائل نقلية وعقلية, affirmed by documentary evidence and sound intellectual arguments. رياضة لدارس الكلام, as practice for all aspirants in Sunni theology. وليوردها من أحكمها على مستمعه أو خصمه, and so that whoever masters this information could produce the proofs for whoever listens to him or for an opponent. سواء المقر بالشريعة لا سيما إن كان منكرا للعقل والمنكر للشريعة. Documentary evidence is for whoever confesses to the sacred law, especially if he denies the proof of the mind. He doesn't want any mental proof. Then you can just give him documentary proof. Here's an ayah, here's a hadith. Intellectual arguments are for who does not confess to the sacred law. Then what's left? What's left is for us to give him sound, rational arguments. Createdness. وهي, and that Sunni creed is أن تعلم أن العالم بجميع أركانه وأجسامه, is that you know that the world with all of its components, its bodies, وما يشتمل عليه من أنواع النبات والحيوانات, and what it contains of various plants and living creatures, وجميع الأفعال والأقوال والاعتقادات, and all actions, sayings, and convictions, كلها مخلوق كائن عن أول. They are all entirely and without exception created and came forth with a beginning after non-existence. حادث بعد أن لم يكن شيئا. Each is an event that occurred after it was not anything whatsoever. ولا عينا ولا ذاتا ولا جوهرا ولا عرضا. It was no sort of individual or self or particle or quality. والدليل على حدوثها أن صفاتها تتغير عليها فتخرج من حال إلى حال. The argument, the rational argument for the createdness of all those things is that their qualities change. They go from one situation to another. وحقيقة التغير أن تبطل حالة فتحدث أخرى. What change truly means is for one situation to vanish and for another to occur. So it's clear for us that exactly means being created. فأما الحالة التي حدثت, concerning how a thing is initially or presently, فحدوثها معلوم بالضرورة بالمشاهدة. That is known by necessity, by way of observation. Yani, you see it as it is. وما كان ضروريا لم يفتقر إلى استدلال عليه, and thus does not have to be proven. That's very important there. Since it's known by necessity and since it is known by observation, then it does not have to be proven. So we're not going to let someone say to us about a thing that's right there in front of his face, prove it. Like, for example, if I have here a yellow bag. So I'm not going to let a person say to me, prove to me this bag is yellow. La, I'm sorry. I'm not that silly. So unless you're colorblind, are you colorblind? Yes, there's no way I can prove it to you. You can't see it. You can see colors? Yeah, okay. Let's stop playing games and move on then. So وما كان ضروريا لم يفتقر إلى استدلال عليه. Whatever is known by necessity does not have to be proven. ولا يجوز أن يقال إنها انتقلت من باطن الجسم إلى ظاهره. And it is not valid to argue that when it changed, the change was previously existing inside the thing. The change was already there, and merely it moved to the outside. لاستحالة الانتقالات على الصفات, because change is an attribute, and attributes do not move. Like color doesn't move, for example. Well, also smell doesn't move, and sound doesn't move, but that needs clarity. Someone might think smell and sound move. They don't. What moves is the air, not the sound, not the smell. They say faster than the speed of sound, sound doesn't move, doesn't have a speed. Because sound is merely a quality, an attribute. But it's the air around the thing that adapts to the sound of the thing. Like now, I'm a body and a sound, I make a sound. So this sound that comes from me doesn't leave me. It doesn't leave me. It doesn't go somewhere else. But the air around me adapts to the sound that I make. And then the air would move. And the air around me would adapt to a smell. And then the air would move. So it's not valid to argue that the change was already inside the thing and then it just came out to the outside. That's a very ridiculous argument, because that one is trying to argue here. He's trying to say, well, the change is eternal. It's impossible, or else it didn't change. There's no way for a change to be eternal. There's no way for a change to exist before the thing changes. وَأَمَّا الْحَالَةُ الَّتِي بَطَلَتْ, and concerning the situation that vanished, لَوْ كَانَتْ قَدِيمَةً لَمْ تَبْطُلْ, had it been eternal without a beginning, it would never have vanished. فَبُطْلَانُهَا يَدُلُّ عَلَى حُدُوثِهَا, its vanishing is therefore proof of its createdness. لِأَنَّ الْقَدِيمَ لَا يَبْطُلْ, because what is beginningless is endless. So that change couldn't have been beginningless. وَإِنَّمَا قُلْنَا إِنَّ الْقَدِيمَ لَا يَبْطُلْ, we only say that what is beginningless is endless. لِأَنَّهُ مَا كَانَ لَهُ نِهَايَةٌ فَلَهُ بِدَايَةٌ, because whatever has an end has a beginning. فَإِذًا مَا تَغَيَّرَ فَهُوَ مَخْلُوقٌ, therefore, if something changes, it is created, not eternal. وَإِذَا تَقَرَّرَ أَنَّ صِفَاتِ الْأَجْسَامِ مَخْلُوقَةٌ, and if it is settled that the attributes of bodies are created, ثَبَتَ أَنَّ الْأَجْسَامَ مَخْلُوقَةٌ, it is then settled that the bodies themselves are created. That's what Shaykh taught us in Mukhtasar, isn't it? That he said, when it was that the self of Allah is eternal, then it had to be that the attributes were eternal, because a created attribute entails a created self. That's the same thing that the author says here, Abul-Mudhaffar. لِأَنَّ مَا لَا يَخْلُو مِنَ الْحَوَادِثِ لَا يَسْبِقُهَا, because whatever is not devoid of creations happening to it cannot exist before creations. Yani, anything that something can happen to it, anything that is susceptible to something happening to it, cannot exist before something happens. Because whatever is not devoid of creations happening to it cannot exist before creations. Here, the word creation and the word happen, those are very close in meaning. We could say, because whatever is not devoid of happenings cannot exist before something happens. Whatever is not devoid of creations cannot exist before creations. Whatever is not devoid of creations happening to it, like getting bigger and or getting smaller or moving or being still or touching or disconnecting, all of those are things happening to something. Whatever is not devoid of creations happening to it cannot exist before creations. Perhaps that answers a question for me. Some people asked, if something is created, but it just doesn't change apparently, like it stays the same. Let's say it doesn't get dusty, it doesn't crack, nothing happens to it. It just stays exactly the same. Would we say it changes? And I was inclined to say it changes because it's older than it was before. And then some people were like, is that really a change? Okay, but it wouldn't be able to be older than it was before unless it was created. Whatever is not devoid of creations happening to it cannot exist before creations. فَلَا يَكُونُ مُحْدِثًا بِالْكَثْرِ. It then would not be what creates and makes things happen. This thing that changes. Or this thing that can't have things. This thing that can't exist without something happening. This thing that can't exist without something happening. It then could not be what creates and makes things happen. وَمَا لَا يَسْتَحِقُّ أَنْ يَكُونَ مُحْدِثًا كَانَ مُحْدَثًا. Whatever exists without being qualified to be what makes things happen is itself something that happened. بِالْفَتْحِ مِثْلَهَا. Muhdath with a fatha, that means created. Muhdith with kasra or muhdath with fatha means what happened. Muhdith with kasra means what made something happen. فَاعْلَمْ أَنَّ الْحَوَادِثَ لَا يَجُوزُ حُلُولُهَا فِي ذَاتِهِ وَصِفَاتِهِ. So know that events and occurrences could not dwell within the self or attributes of God. لأن ما كان محلا للحوادث لم يخلو منها. Because if anything happens to something, that thing is itself something that happened. وإذا لم يخلو منها كان محدثا مثلها. So all of that was rational argument. Is there documentary evidence for what we have said? Yes. وقد نبه الله تعالى على هذه الدلالة. Allah Ta'ala drew our attention to this argument, this rational argument. Its source is in the Quran, or it does exist. It can be found in the Quran. بِقَوْلِهِ, by God saying, أَمْ خُلِقُوا مِنْ غَيْرِ شَيْءٍ. Or is it that they are created without anything creating them? كَأَنَّهُ قَالَ هل يعقل أن ثبت فيهم وصف حادث من غير شيء أحدثهم? This is due to the impossibility of something with a created description existing without a creator that created. Here, as if it were said, is it rational that they would have a confirmed created attribute without something creating them? So that's already contained here. I was looking for why I didn't translate that, because it's there already. Or is it that they are created without anything creating them? Meaning, here, this part is what's translated as the meaning of the ayah. If you want to just translate the ayah literally, it's going to say, were they created from nothing? Without anything? Were they created without anything? Is it that they are created without anything creating them? That's the meaning. إِنَّهُ يَسْتَحِيلُ ثُبُوتُ خَلْقٍ مِنْ غَيْرِ خَالِقٍ. This is due to the impossibility of something with a created description existing without a creator that created. من غير خالق خلق ولا صانع صنع. Or without a maker that made. ولا مدبر دبر. Or a manager that managed. ولهذا قال الخليل عليه الصلاة والسلام. And for this reason, that was Prophet Abraham's argument. sallallahu alayhi wasallam for not worshipping the star. When he said, La uhibbul afilin, I do not love, meaning I do not worship what sets, meaning what disappears or fades away. بين به أن من حل به من المعاني ما يغيره من حال إلى حال كان محدثا. He clarified for them that what has created attributes, what changes, is created. ولا يصح أن يكون إلها. It is not then possible that it be God. فالمخلوق لا بد له من خالق. Thus, the creation must indubitably have a creator. لأن الأجسام لو وجدت بأنفسها مع تجانس ذواتها لم تختلف بالصفات والأوقات والأحوال والمحال. Indeed, had bodies been existing without anyone to create them, although they are the same type of thing, bodies, they would not have been existing at various times in diverse ways and in different spots. فإن الاختصاص بأحد الجائزين يقتضي مخصصا لولاه لم يقع التخصيص به. Because being specifically one of two possible ways dictates a specifier. We're saying, had bodies existed without someone to create them, that's impossible in itself. But had that been confirmed, then what would be confirmed also is that none of those bodies would be different from each other. So if I have here a laptop and it's sitting on a table, if there wasn't someone to create these bodies, then there wouldn't be a difference between this laptop and this table. Being specifically one of two possible ways dictates a specifier. فَلَمَّا اخْتَلَفَتْ عَلِمْنَا أَنَّ لَهَا مُخَصِّصًا. When it was that they differed, our intellects judged that they have a specifier. قَدَّمَ مَا قَدَّمَ وَأَخَّرَ مَا أَخَّرَ. Advancing whatever was ahead and delaying whatever was behind. وَخَصَّ كُلَّ وَاحِدٍ مِنْهَا بِمَا اخْتَصَّ بِهِ مِنَ الصِّفَاتِ. And particularizing each with its particular attributes. لولاه لم يقع الاختصاص في شيء من الأوصاف. Had it not been for that, there would not have been anything specific or particular about anything. Nothing would have been particular about anything. Here, at this point, I had thought about that many years ago before I took this book. I actually wrote it in some lyrics. I had a rhyme that I wrote. It was called "The Creator's Not Created." So in there, a Muslim debated with a sun worshiper. He debated with a Christian and a sun worshiper. So then I wanted to do a part two. In part two, the Muslim was debating with a scientist with a doctor's coat, like has a white lab coat. So they were debating back and forth, and then the Muslim argued this point, that if there wasn't a creator, then nothing would be different from anything else. But I hadn't heard that. I just thought of that. And I said to myself, really, really makes sense. I didn't hear it though. And then when I took this book, I was so happy that he said that, because it made me know that I was thinking properly. Alhamdulillah. So then when I took that and I knew that this was right, then I felt more confident about myself in this issue. وَإِنَّ اللَّهَ تَعَالَى قَدْ نَبَّهَ عَلَى الْإِسْتِدْلَالِ وَالِاحْتِجَاجِ بِهَذِهِ الطَّرِيقَةِ. Indeed, God Almighty revealed this intellectual argument in several verses, like Al-Baqarah 164. فَقَالَ إن في خلق السماوات والأرض واختلاف الليل والنهار والفلك التي تجري في البحر والفلك التي تجري في البحر بما ينفع الناس وما أنزل الله من السماء من ماء فأحيا به الأرض بعد موتها وبث فيها من كل دابة وتصريف الرياح والسحاب المسخر بين السماء والأرض لآيات لقوم يعقلون. Surely, in the creation of the marvels within heavens and earth, and the alternation of the night and the day, and the ships that run in the sea without sinking, with cargo that benefits the people, and in what Allah brings down from the sky of water, by which He revives the vegetation of the earth after its death, the withering of its plants. And by that lushness He made every sort of crawling thing spread throughout the earth. And in the fluctuation of the winds and the floating clouds subjugated between the sky and the earth, there are indeed signs for a thinking folk. So there's that argument that we were making about the fact that things differ. Different bodies have different qualities. That proves that there's a creator. Also in Surah Al-Ra'd, Ayah 4, وفي الأرض قطع متجاورات وجنات من أعناب وزرع ونخيل صنوان وغير صنوان يسقى بماء واحد ونفضل بعضها على بعض في الأكل. And in the earth are parcels, that means patches of land, bordering each other, and gardens of grapes, and cultivation, and palm trees. Some are double palm trees from one trunk, and some are single palms. All are irrigated by the same water, and we make some of their fruits more preferable than others. And in Surah Al-An'am, Ayah 99.
Shaykh,
yes.
Can I just wanted to ask a question.
Yes.
So, not Surah Al-Ra'd, the one before it,
yes.
That you had here. You know how it said, for a thinking folk?
Yes.
Could we use that, like, to say that, because, as Ash'aris, for example, we use the text, but we also use our minds.
Yes. Yes.
So could we use that as a proof when we look at things and say, well, a creation has this type of attribute, but the creator does not have
yes
that the creation have, because it's
yes. This ayah is evidence for rational argumentation.
okay, barakallahu fikum.
Ameen wa fikum. And in Surah Al-An'am, Ayah 99, وَهُوَ الَّذِي أَنزَلَ مِنَ السَّمَاءِ مَاءً فَأَخْرَجْنَا بِهِ نَبَاتَ كُلِّ شَيْءٍ. And He it is who brings down water from the sky, and thus we produce by it the growth of every growing thing. فأخرجنا منه خضرا نخرج منه حبا متراكبا. Then we produce from it greens, from which we produce clustered seeds. ومن النخل من طلعها قنوان دانية وجنات من أعناب والزيتون والرمان And from the palm tree, from its pollen, are close date clusters. And we produce gardens of grapes and the olives and the pomegranates. مشتبها وغير متشابه, alike and unalike. انظروا إلى ثمره إذا أثمر وينعه. Look, reflect, O those being addressed, at its fruit when it first bears fruit, and at its final stage of ripening. إن في ذلكم لآيات لقوم يؤمنون. Surely in that there are signs of his power to resurrect for a believing folk. Now, if you look into the original book of At-Tabsir, you'll find that it's not all in order like I'm presenting it to you right now. Because there's some repetition in his book, and there's sometimes he's coming back to say something that he said before. So I wanted to omit the repetition, and I wanted to put together everything that has the same topic. So if you look into the original of At-Tafsir and you compare what's here to what's there, it's almost the same words unless I change something here or there, but it's not the same sequence. فخالق العالم لا يجوز عليه الحد والنهاية. Thus, the creator of the world could not possibly have a limit or an edge. لأن الشيء لا يكون مخصوصا بحد إلا أن يخصه مخصص بذلك الحد وتلك النهاية. Because a thing would not be limited to a particular limit unless a specifier specified it with that limit and edge. فإنه يجوز لذلك الشيء غيره من الحدود والصانع لا يكون مصنوعا ولا محدودا ولا مخصصا. Says here in the Arabic, because it's possible that this thing that has limits could be another way. So we already said that. And the maker would not be made, nor would he be limited, nor would he be specified. فالحركة والسكون والذهاب والمجيء والكون في مكان. Consequently, motion, stillness, coming, going, place. والاجتماع والافتراق والقرب والبعد من طريق المسافة. And contact, separation, distance. Here it says distance. In the Arabic, he says, وَالْقُرْبُ وَالْبُعْدُ مِنْ طَرِيقِ الْمَسَافَةِ. Being close or being far in the meaning of distance. So it just says here, distance. وَالْحَجْمُ وَالْجِرْمُ وَالْجُثَّةُ وَالصُّورَةُ وَالْحَيْزُ وَالْمِقْدَارُ وَالنَّوَاحِي وَالْأَقْطَارُ وَالْجَوَانِبُ وَالْجِهَاتِ. And volume, quantity, substance, image, containment, measure, area, vicinity, sides, and directions. كلها لا تجوز عليه تعالى لأن جميعها يوجب الحد والنهاية. All are impossible for God, the glorified, because all of those dictate having a limit and an edge. فليس بجسم ولا جوهر. So he's neither a body nor a particle. لأن الجسم فيه تأليف والجوهر يجوز فيه التألف. Because a body is composed and a particle composes. وكل ما جاز عليه الاتصال فله حد ونهاية. فله حد ونهاية. Anything that can connect has a limit and an edge. وجازت عليه الزيادة والنقصان. And it can increase or decrease. وَلَا تَجُوزُ الزِّيَادَةُ وَالنُّقْصَانُ عَلَى الْبَارِئِ سُبْحَانَهُ. And it is impossible that the originator increases or decreases. God's existence. فَالْخَالِقُ لَشَيْءٌ ثَابِتٌ مَوْجُودٌ. Without an edge or limit, the creator is certainly something confirmed and existent. This part here, without an edge or limit, that's from this letter fat, which is therefore. The letter fat here means therefore or so, so it's connecting to what's before. But since this became like a subsection here, a new section, yani we could just keep reading. If you wanted to skip the title here and just keep reading, you could. But anyway, this was put there for clarity. Without an edge or limit, the creator is certainly something confirmed and existent. And for emphasis, that was put there. لا يجوز وصفه بالعدم. It is not valid that he be described with nothingness. لأن الخالق المحدث لا يكون خالقا محدثا إلا بأن يكون قادرا. Because the creator would not be the creator unless he were powerful. ولا يكون قادرا إلا والقدرة قائمة. And he would not be powerful unless power were confirmed. أما المعدوم فلا يقدر ولا يوصف بشيء. As for nothingness, the non-existent lacks power and has no description. ودليل اتصافه بالوجود أزلا وأبدا قوله تعالى الحي القيوم. The evidence that he is attributed with existence without a beginning and without an end is his saying, which means he is the ever-living Al-Qayyum. فإن القيوم صيغة مبالغة من القيام. Qayyum is an emphatic description of having qiyam, existence or confirmation. وهو الثبات والوجود فلا يجوز وصفه بالعدم بحال. Thus, it is not at all valid that the creator be described with nothingness. Eternality. وَإِنَّ هَذَا الْمُحْدِثَ الْمَوْجُودَ قَدِيمٌ. So indeed, this existent creator is eternal. وَقَدْ وَرَدَ فِي خَبَرِ عِمْرَانَ بْنِ حُصَيْنٍ أَنَّ النَّبِيَّ صلى الله عليه وسلم قال. This came in the hadith of Imran ibn Husayn. كان الله ولم يكن شيء غيره. Allah existed and there was nothing other than him. Here the author used a different version of this hadith. I put the one that the Shaykh uses. وَهَذَا يُوجِبُ الْكَوْنَ أَزَلًا وَأَبَدًا. So this necessitates that he existed eternally and everlastingly. لأنه لو كان محدثا لافتقر إلى محدث قديم. Because had he been an occurring event, he would have needed an eternal creator to make him occur. فإنه لو كان هذا الثاني محدثا لافتقر إلى ثالث هو قديم. Had there been a second one who created the first, but he was also an event, he would have needed a third who is eternal. فيتسلسل. Then that would reverse forever into the past. كل خالق مفتقر إلى خالق آخر لا إلى نهاية. Every creator needing a creator with a beginningless chain. So that notion is impossible, that there would be something created that created something else. That in itself is impossible, but we just entertained it for argument's sake. That had that been the case, then that one would need a creator before him. And had he been like that, he would need a creator before him, forever into the past. With a beginningless chain, that's impossible. If you think about a chain or a series of links, then it's going to be impossible that there was never a first link. It's not impossible that you could keep adding links. So that means an unending future is not impossible. You can keep adding links and adding links and adding links without stopping. That's not impossible. That means that amounts to saying an unending future is not impossible, but a chain that has no beginning, that's impossible. So a beginningless creation, that's impossible. وَكَانَ يَسْتَحِيلُ وُجُودُ الْخَالِقِ وَالْمَخْلُوقِ جَمِيعًا. If there were a beginningless chain of creators, the existence of creator and creations would both be impossible. لأن ما شرط وجوده أن يأتي بعد ما لا نهاية له من الأعداد قبله لم يأتي موجودا. Indeed, if something's existence depends upon a beginningless chain ending, it would never get a chance to start. استحالة انتهاء ما لا ابتداء له. Since it is impossible for what is beginningless to end. لتنتهي النوبة إلى شيء بعد ذلك حقيقة القدم. This is the real meaning of being eternal. فإذا لا بد لكل محدث من واحد قديم هو قديم واحد. Therefore, any and every occurrence that happened most indubitably requires an eternal one who was one in eternity. Yani, this statement here draws attention to the synonymous meaning of one for God and eternal for God. When we refer to God as one, it does, if you think right, it does mean he's eternal without a beginning. To say God is one only and stop there, period, that would, you could conclude from there, you can extract from there that God has no beginning for his existence. And if you say God is eternal, period, then you can extract from there that God is one without a partner. Anyway, so this attribute of oneness, if you just mention that one alone, then you'll come to many meanings. The oneness. You might wonder, why is the oneness? Why is there a focus on the oneness? I didn't find a focus on, let's say, the independence like I find it on the oneness. I didn't find a focus on, let's say, the dissimilarity like I found for the oneness. But this meaning here, the meaning of oneness, from that you can get all of those. He has no partner. He has no beginning. He has no similar. He is independent. He has no requirement. He's not a body or shape or form. وأصل هذه الدلالة في الحديث في قوله صلى الله عليه وسلم فمن أعدى الأول. This argument is found in the hadith. The argument against the beginningless chain is found in the hadith when the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alayhi wasallam denied contagion by asking who infected the first. فَبَيَّنَ أَنَّ مَا أَدَّى إِلَى التَّسَلْسُلِ مُحَالٌ. Here he clarified that whatever leads to a beginningless chain is impossible. That's not in the original book. I added that. And this talk here, this talk about beginningless chain is adjusted from what's in the author's book. Independence. إذن البارئ سبحانه وتعالى لا يجوز وصفه بالحاجة. Therefore, the glorified and exalted originator could not validly be described with having a requirement. فإنه يلزمه أن يخرج من وصف الحاجة إلى وصف الاستغناء. If God had a requirement, that he would have to stop requiring. If God had a requirement, he would have to stop requiring and become independent. وذلك يتضمن بطلان صفة وحدوث صفة. However, that would mean that he must change, that an attribute of God vanishes, then a created attribute replaces it. وقد برهنا على أن القديم سبحانه وتعالى لا يجوز عليه البطلان ولا الحدوث. And we have already proven that occurring and vanishing are not valid for the eternal. You could say is there if occurring and vanishing means one thing. وَأَصْلُهُ قَوْلُهُ سُبْحَانَهُ وَتَعَالَى. The origin of this creed is the saying of God Almighty, وَاللَّهُ الْغَنِيُّ وَأَنْتُمُ الْفُقَرَاءُ. Allah is Al-Ghani, not needy, and you creatures are the needy. بَيَّنَ بِهَذَا أَنَّ صِفَةَ الْحَاجَةِ وَالْإِفْتِقَارِ مُحَالٌ عَلَيْهِ. In this verse, Allah clarified that for him, the description of requirement and need is impossible. فَهُوَ قَائِمٌ بِنَفْسِهِ. He is therefore existent by himself. وَمَعْنَاهُ أَنَّهُ بِوُجُودِهِ مُسْتَغْنٍ عَنْ خَالِقٍ يَخْلُقُهُ. وَعَنْ مَحَلٍ يَحُلُّهُ وَعَنْ مَكَانٍ يُقِلُّهُ. Independently existing, not needing for his existence a creator to create him or a space to limit him. وَقَدْ ذَكَرْنَا دَلِيلَهُ آنِفًا فِي اسْمِهِ تَعَالَى الْقَيُّومِ. That is also proven by his name that we have already cited, Al-Qayyum. فَإِنَّ مِن تَفَاسِيرِهِ الْقَائِمَ بِنَفْسِهِ. Because another interpretation for it is independently existing. وَكَمَا أَنَّهُ لَيْسَ جِسْمًا وَلَا جَوْهَرًا. And just as he is neither a body nor a particle, كَذَلِكَ لَيْسَ بِعَرَضٍ. He is not a fleeting quality. لِأَنَّ الْعَرَضَ لَا يَقُومُ بِنَفْسِهِ. He is not a fleeting quality, which means a created attribute, because such a thing does not exist independently. وَلَا يَكُونُ الْخَالِقُ إِلَّا قَائِمًا بِنَفْسِهِ. And the creator would not be but independently existing. وَالصَّحِيحُ أَنَّ الْعَرَضَ مِنْهُ مَا لَا يَبْقَى زَمَانَيْنِ كَالْحَرَكَةِ وَالِاسْتِطَاعَةِ وَمِنْهُ مَا يَبْقَى أَكْثَرَ مِنْ ذَلِكَ كَالْعِلْمِ وَاللَّوْنِ مَعَ جَوَازِ ذَهَابِهِ. What is correct is that some created attributes do not last for more than a mere moment, like motion and ability, and some do, like knowledge and color. Though susceptible to vanishing, knowledge and color, they do last for more than a mere moment, but they still could go away. أما الخالق فيجب ألا يكون إلا باقيا لا يتغير. As for the creator, it is necessary that he would not be but everlasting and unchanging. This talk here is added, not from the author, about created attributes, some of them lasting for only a mere moment and some for more than that. This is an adjustment actually from what the author said, because he just said a statement that our Shaykh does not accept. He said the created attribute, the arad, or the fleeting quality, it is something that does not last for 2 moments, period. Our Shaykh does not accept this open statement or this generality. And he says what's correct is that there are 2 cases. Some of them don't last for 2 moments, and some of them do. So, in following our Shaykh, we replaced what the author said with what the Shaykh said here. And the examples we got here are motion and ability. So it means that when you move, let's say your hand, from one place to another place, then what that is a series of motions consecutively back to back, each one lasting for a mere moment and disappearing, being followed by another and followed by another. Ability is the same. So when you do something that you're able to do, like lift something, then the ability that you use to lift that thing, it exists only for a mere moment, one mere moment, and then it vanishes, but it will be followed by another moment of ability, and then vanish, and then another, until maybe after that your ability goes away. وَخُرُوجُ الذَّاتِ عَنْ صِفَةٍ وَاجِبَةٍ لَهُ مُحَالٌ. And for a thing to ever depart its necessary attribute is impossible. فَلَوْ جَازَ خُرُوجُهَا عَنْ تِلْكَ الصِّفَةِ الْوَاجِبَةِ لَصَارَتْ جَائِزَةَ الْوُجُودِ. Had something's departing its necessary attribute been possible, it would not have actually been necessary. It would have only been possible. وَمَا كَانَ وَاجِبَ الْوُجُودِ لَا يَصِيرُ جَائِزَ الْوُجُودِ. And whatever is necessarily existent would not be reduced to merely possibly existent. كما أن جائز الوجود لا يصير واجب الوجود. Just as what possibly exists never would graduate to become necessarily existent. لأنهما صفتان متناقضتان. Because they are contrary attributes. How about we stop there